So a leftover woman once tried incredibly hard to seduce me. There is this ridiculous phenomenon in China. I'm sure everybody's heard of the shortage of women in China, because of the one-child policy and selective abortions and things like that. You have a lot more men than women. Of course, in the cities you wouldn't know, but in the rural parts of China, it's very apparent. When you drive through or ride through like I have on motorcycles, you get to realize very quickly that out there are very few women. And the women you do see are usually very old grandmothers or very young children. The thing is, you would think, because of this gender imbalance, that leftover women wouldn't exist. And I guess I need to tell you what a leftover woman is. In China, if a woman is not married or is not in a relationship by the time they hit around 30 years old, they kind of become undesirable. Nobody wants to marry them. And it's a really stupid situation. So if a woman is focused on her career, or maybe she's had other priorities in her life and doesn't want to get married at a young age, she tends to reach that age and then nobody wants to marry her. And this is a tragic situation, and you see this a lot. So you see a lot of rich, successful women, and now they can't get married because in China the families will not allow their sons to marry a leftover woman. So it's absurd. So here's my story regarding a leftover woman. When I was teaching English back in the day, and this is what everybody used to do, is you'd have your main job. So I'd teach kindergarten, and then I moved on to teaching at a training center. So I was teaching at a fairly good training center. But what people would do is they would do private work. And it comes very easily, because usually what happens is you have a client or you're teaching somebody, especially if you're doing business English or if you're teaching a corporation. So I would go in and maybe train a bunch of managers at a software company or something. And then one of them will have a friend who wants to learn English or wants their children to learn English, and they will always approach you and say, hey, my friend wants you to teach their son, or my friend wants you to teach their daughter English, or my friend wants you to teach them English. And I'd always, decline, especially if it was children, because, I taught kindergarten for about a year and a half, and it was hell on earth. No joke. Anyone who's ever had to teach a bunch of 4 or 5-year-old little emperors running around blowing their noses on you and stuff, you kind of get over it really quickly. Thing is, through one of these connections, I was told there's a young interior designer, young woman who wants me to teach her English. So, I agreed to meet up, and the usual thing when you're going to start a business relationship in China is you go for dinner. So we all went for dinner, my client and this lady and myself. So we went for dinner. We went to a really swank place. I was quite surprised because it's usually just a run-of-the-mill restaurant, but this one was really nice. So I was like, wow, that's interesting. So she seemed very nice, and she's successful. Like I said, she ran an interior design company, and she asked me to come give her private lessons at home. And I agreed. Once a week I'd go there, and I suggested a book that she should get, like a textbook. Back in the day, when you're into ESL, you learn all the good books that are available for people to learn. So I recommended a good book for her. I did some prep for our lessons and all that. And I turned up at her place at the appointed time, appointed day. And the first lesson actually went really well. She seemed quite interested in the textbook, and she was, her English was pretty poor, to be honest. But a lot of these sort of professional women, they like to learn English because they like to expand their businesses abroad, of course, and to deal with clients overseas and so on. So the thing is, it all went really well, seemed fine. She cooked me lunch, which I found was a little odd. It was very nice of her and everything. I told her it's not necessary, but I enjoyed it anyway. And it started to get weird from then on. Like every time I turned up, she would like scoot right up next to me and, be very close and kind of find excuses to bump into me. And she started to wear sort of more skimpy clothes type thing. Now, I'll be the first person to admit that I'm pretty dumb when it comes to the opposite sex. I usually kind of don't pick up on signals, and obviously she was sending these signals loud and clear. But they weren't working, so she stepped it up a game. So I turned up one day, and usual thing, in my suit, I got my lesson prepared to teach her and stuff, and we're sitting down and doing the work. And I noticed that there's like porn magazines all around, because she had like a little office that we used to do the lessons in. She had like porn magazines, literally like Playboy and stuff like that, lying around the office. And I was like, what is she doing? And she had like some of the centerfolds open, and things. And I just pretended to ignore them, but she kept trying to divert my attention to them. And she was like trying to say like, don't you like this artwork? Something like that, and then point to like a magazine. And I was like, yeah, it looks good, let's carry on with the lesson type thing. So that didn't work. So she knocked it up another notch. Next time I came along, we're busy doing the usual thing. She cooked me lunch, which was really nice, and I appreciated it. And don't get me wrong, it's not like she wasn't an attractive woman, but I was in a relationship at the time, and there's something that I absolutely will never do, and that is cheat on someone. It's baked into my DNA, and I just cannot stand the idea of doing that. Anyway, I just don't do that. So she was attractive, and who knows, maybe if I was single I maybe, but at the same time I also don't like to take advantage of someone in a desperate situation, so I probably wouldn't have done anything anyway. Thing is, this time around she goes and pulls these like photo albums off the top of a shelf, and she's like, I want to show you something. So I'm like, okay. So she starts going through this photo album, and in the photo album are these very artistic professional photographs of her, you see. And it starts with the usual, I like 99% of Chinese girls get these kind of professional photo shoots done, especially when they're around about 18 years old. And I've heard some of them tell me it's because they want to preserve their youth, what they look like, their prime type thing. And a lot of these pictures are ridiculous. It's like fantasy pictures of them with swords, or dressed up like a goddess, or dressed up like an empress, or, sometimes dressed up in the Mao Zedong revolutionary clothes and stuff. It's interesting. It's cringe. It's incredibly cringe. It's kind of like those glam shots people used to take in the 80s, in the shopping malls, something like that. But they always have like heavy blur filters on them and stuff. And anyway, so it starts out with these things. It's all fine and good. And I'm just being polite and, oh, that looks really nice. That's a very good photo of you, etc., etc. Then the clothes start to come off, and she starts showing me photos of herself completely naked. And I'm like, okay. And she like lingers on them, and she's getting closer and closer and closer to me the whole time. It's like, what do you think of this one? What do you think of this? How about this? And I mean, when I say naked, I mean completely naked, not an ounce of clothing on her, and all these like sort of sexy poses and ridiculous things. And I was feeling incredibly uncomfortable. And it just got to the point where she was like, do you want to go to the bedroom, basically? And I was like, I don't want to give you the wrong idea here. I'm in a relationship, and, I think you're a very attractive woman and all that stuff. And she was like, it didn't catch on with her. So she was like, okay, she told me, I want you to go and get an STD check at the hospital. This is all in Chinese and stuff, because her English is pretty poor. She's like, I want you to go and get an STD check. Next time you come here, we're going to do it, basically. And I was like, I just didn't know where to go. This was incredibly uncomfortable. So I kind of stopped going there after that. I just kind of made excuses. Sorry, I can't come this week. I'm too busy or whatever. And I just never went back there again. Thing is, she was still on my social media, and things worked out for her. She actually, she did end up marrying a foreigner, a French guy, I think. And, lots of happy pictures of them together and all that. So I'm incredibly happy for her. And why is it that this all took place? Why was she so desperate? And why did she try to find an English teacher, to be her, to marry? Because look, she had money. She used to find excuses to try and drive me around in her Mercedes. Like, oh, I'll drop you off at home. And she did once. I was like, okay, sure, thank you. And, she had a big, expensive Mercedes, which for China, it means you're very rich. If you can afford a nice, flashy, top-of-the-line Mercedes-Benz, means you're loaded. Obviously, she was a very successful woman. And I'm just an English teacher at the time. You know, I'm not making a lot of money. I make my own money. I'm not poor or anything, but I'm not rich or anything. So why is it that she would go out of her way to try and seduce me in order to marry me? Because that was her end goal. And that's simply because a woman in her position, and I mean like looks-wise, she's about a 6 out of 10, you know, so she's not like stunning or anything, but she wasn't bad at all. A woman in her position will find it incredibly difficult to marry a Chinese man for a couple of reasons. Number one, the whole leftover woman thing. You know, she was in her 30s, early 30s. She's probably about 32, I would say, at a guess. I didn't ask her age because that's impolite. But I guess she's about 32. And having a child is probably the most important thing in the Chinese family unit. So once you hit 32, you're already right at the edge where, you know, it's going to be difficult to have children. Of course, we all know that it's totally possible. My wife actually had our child like only a year ago, you know. So it's not an impossibility. And it's just one of those things. Well, 7 months ago, I should say. So when our daughter's just hit 7 months now, which is awesome. Very happy about that. Anyway, what I was trying to say is that, first of all, fertility is the first thing that they think about. But they also think that if a woman has not been married or been in a serious relationship or something by that age, that there must be something wrong with her. And this is a conversation I've had with a lot of Chinese women, and it is just part of society. It's incredibly difficult for them to get married if they pass a certain age. So there's not only that, but being a successful woman herself, the way that Chinese relationships and marriages work is it's still a very male-dominated society, and she would be expected to be subservient to her husband. And this is something that is incredibly difficult for a successful self-made woman to do, because, like I said, she was rich, she had her own money, she's driving around in flashy cars, she's got a great business, you know, and imagine her having to now suddenly cook and clean a house for somebody and raise their children and not have a say in what goes on in family matters and stuff. So that's the other reason. And this is why you find so many middle-aged Chinese women on all these dating sites trying to look for foreigners. It's not because they want to leave China. This is contrary to what a lot of people believe. A lot of Americans and Australians or whatever, they're online, they're like, I want to rescue this girl and give her a better life in my country. That's not what they're looking for. They actually love staying in China. They love China, but they have this issue where they cannot find love. They cannot find a marriage in China. So they look for that abroad. And a lot of them actually try to import that. So if you get involved with a Chinese woman, especially one that you've met online through China, it won't take too long before they try to drag your ass to China and try to get you to stay there. Just bear that in mind, guys. And that's my story of how how a leftover woman attempted to seduce me. Unsuccessful. And looking back, I'm pretty proud of myself. I didn't take advantage of the situation because I would have felt bad if I had. Like I said, she's happily married now and she got what she wanted, and it's fantastic. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the story, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Please don't forget that we've got ADVChina on Monday, where we ride our motorcycles and we have adventures around Asia and beyond. And then on Tuesday, we have Worthless Whips, our car channel, which we're trying to expand. It's so much fun. I can't wait for you guys to check it out. I've just got a new car, which is going to be featured fairly soon. And Thursday, you can see our podcast every second Thursday. And Friday, catch another SerpentZA. And don't forget, of course, Wednesday, Laowai86, which I don't know why I skipped that, but it's important. Go check out Laowai86 on Wednesdays. See you guys next time. Stay awesome.